You are sitting in a mahogany-lined corporate boardroom across a polished table from a team of corporate lawyers and a multi-million-dollar commercial developer. The room is quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner. The developer looks you dead in the eye and says, "We have a major problem on Site 3. The county is threatening to shut down our entire project because of root damage to a historic oak, and we need you to clear us with a formal report by Friday afternoon." Now, 20 years ago, I would have gotten all excited, started scribbling notes on a legal pad, and promised to rush out there and get it done, thinking about how huge the payoff would be. But today, with 30 years of hard-earned scar tissue in this industry, I don't move an inch. I lean back in my chair, I cap my pen, and I say, "I can absolutely solve this for you, but before my boots ever touch the dirt on Site 3, my firm requires a signed consulting agreement and a $3,000 upfront retainer deposited into our operating account." The developer doesn't pull a face, he doesn't argue, he just nods at his chief financial officer, who immediately cuts the check. That is the exact moment you stop being a guy who cuts trees for a living and you become a professional consultant whose mind commands absolute authority. But you know, it doesn't always go that way if you don't know how to package your brain. Let me tell you about a nightmare scenario that happened to a phenomenal climber I know, a fella named Marcus. Marcus is a sharp guy, holds his ISA certified arborist credential, got his track qualification, knows his tree biology inside and out. He got a call from a high-end custom home builder who wanted an assessment on 7 mature heritage longleaf pines on a luxury lot. The builder told him, "Look, just give me a quick write-up on their health so I can show it to the building inspector and clear our permits." Marcus went out there, spent an entire Saturday afternoon checking the trees, taking trunk measurements, examining the soil, and looking for signs of bark beetle stress. He went home, spent another 6 hours on his computer typing up a beautiful, highly detailed 12-page report with annotated color photographs and specific mitigation recommendations. He emailed the file over to the builder on a Monday morning with an invoice for $800. And then, nothing. Silence. 2 weeks went by. Marcus called the builder. The phone went straight to voicemail. 3 more weeks went by. He sent follow-up emails. Nothing but crickets. Finally, about 2 months later, Marcus was driving past that luxury lot. He pulled over and his stomach dropped. Every single one of those 7 heritage longleaf pines had been clear-cut and bulldozed into a pile. The builder had taken Marcus's beautiful 12-page report, used the single sentence where Marcus noted that 3 of the trees had minor structural lean, twisted it to tell the city council that the trees were hazardous, got his removal permits approved, and threw Marcus's $800 invoice straight into the trash can. Marcus spent 15 hours of his life, used thousands of dollars of his hard-earned intellectual property, and he didn't make a single dime. Even worse, his name was now attached to a report that was used to justify a clear cut. He had zero legal leverage because he had done the entire project based on a verbal handshake. He didn't package his brain, he didn't secure a retainer, and he didn't have a contract that protected his liability or his copyright. He got treated like a commodity laborer, and it broke his spirit. Listen to me, we cannot operate like that anymore. When you transition away from running a crew and dragging brush, you are no longer selling a physical result that the client can visually see before they pay the bill. When you remove a tree, the homeowner can look out the window and see that the tree is gone, the stump is ground, and the yard is clean. The value is obvious, so they write the check. But when you are a consultant, you are selling your intellectual capacity, your professional opinion, and your legal accountability. If you do not know how to wrap that intellectual property in a bulletproof, rock-solid business framework, the corporate world will chew you up, spit you out, and steal your knowledge without ever paying for it. Today, we are going to dive deep into the exact engineering of how you package your brain. We are going to break down the exact math behind hourly rates, how to structure project-based flat fees for formal reports, how to implement a retainer system that guarantees you never get burned again, and how to write a consulting agreement that draws an absolute legally binding boundary around your liability. Let us start with a deep forensic breakdown of how to structure your actual fees, because this is where most arborists get completely lost. They don't know what they are worth. They try to base their consulting fees on what they used to charge for tree trimming, or they look at what a local lawn care guy charges per hour, and it ruins their credibility. There are three primary weapons in your billing arsenal, and you have to know exactly when and how to deploy them. The first is your straight hourly rate. The second is the flat fee project report. The third is the professional retainer. Let us unpack each one of these with absolute precision. Your hourly rate is the foundation of everything you do. It represents the cost of your unadulterated time, whether you are sitting in your truck driving to a site, standing in a field looking through binoculars, or sitting at your desk typing on a computer. Now listen to me. Your hourly consulting rate should never, ever be less than $150 an hour. And if you have advanced credentials like a board-certified master arborist or extensive forensic expert witness experience, that rate should easily be $250 to $350 an hour. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking nobody in my town is going to pay me $250 an hour just to talk about trees. But you have to realize who your client is when you are a consultant. You are no longer dealing primarily with the budget-conscious residential homeowner who is scraping together pennies to trim a hedge. Your clients are now developers, commercial property management firms, civil engineers, high-end landscape architects, insurance adjusters, and law firms. These people do not hire commodities. They hire line-item experts. When a developer hires a civil engineer, they are paying that engineer $250 an hour. When they hire their real estate attorney, they are paying $400 to $600 an hour. If you show up to a corporate development meeting and tell them that your fee is $45 an hour, you don't sound like a bargain. You sound like an amateur who doesn't know what he is doing. You instantly destroy your authority. A premium fee signals premium expertise. When you bill by the hour, you must bill for every single second dedicated to that specific file. This is where tree guys lose thousands of dollars a month because of bad habits. They only bill for the time their boots are physically standing on the client's grass. But as a consultant, your work starts long before you ever key the ignition on your truck. Let us map out an actual, realistic, hourly billing calculation for a commercial site assessment. Say a commercial retail center calls you because three massive live oaks in their main parking island are causing the asphalt to heave, and the property manager is terrified that a customer is going to trip, fall, sue the company, and cost them millions. You accept the job at a rate of $200 per hour. Your billing clock starts the moment you open the file at your desk. You spend 30 minutes reviewing the civil site plans, looking at the historical satellite images of the property to see when the asphalt was laid, and reading the local municipal tree preservation ordinances to see what the city rules are for root pruning. That is 0.5 hours. Then you spend 45 minutes driving across town through traffic to get to the shopping center. That is 0.75 hours. You spend an hour and 15 minutes on site utilizing your air spade or your root probe, mapping out the structural root architecture, and measuring the depth of the compaction. That is 1.25 hours. You spend 45 minutes driving back to your office. That is another 0.75 hours. Then you spend 2 hours at your desk writing a clean, concise, 3-page diagnostic memo detailing the structural root zones, recommending root barrier installations, and outlining an asphalt bridging strategy that will save the trees and fix the trip hazard. That is 2.0 hours. Let us add that up. Look at the math. 0.5 plus 0.75 plus 1.25 plus 0.75 plus 2. That is exactly 5.25 hours of total portal-to-portal work dedicated to that client. At $200 an hour, that invoice comes out to exactly $1,500. And how many chainsaws did you pull? 0. How many limbs did you drag? 0. You spent a morning utilizing your brain, and you generated $1,500 of high-margin revenue because you tracked and billed for every single phase of your intellectual labor. You must account for your travel time, your research time, your phone calls, your emails, and your report writing time. If it touches their file, it gets billed to their invoice. Now let us move to the second weapon, which is the flat fee project report. There are many times when a client, especially a government agency, a municipality, or a highly structured corporate client will say, "Look, we cannot accept an open-ended hourly contract. Our corporate budget requires a fixed, predictable cost for this project. We need a flat fee for a comprehensive tree protection plan or a specialized plant appraisal report. When you quote a flat fee for an intellectual report, you must utilize what I call the internal multiplier method. You never just guess a number out of thin air. If you think to yourself, yeah, that feels like a $1,200 report, you are setting yourself up to get completely slaughtered by scope creep. Instead, you must reverse engineer that flat fee by estimating the absolute maximum number of hours the project will take, multiplying that by your hourly rate, and then adding a 20% contingency cushion to protect your time against unexpected complications. Let us walk through an example. You are asked to write a formal tree protection plan for a commercial general contractor who is building a new medical office building on a site that has 14 mature, high-value pines and turkey oaks that must be preserved according to city code. You know your baseline hourly rate is $200. You sit down with a piece of paper and you break down the project phase by phase before you write the proposal. Phase 1, initial document review and engineering blueprint analysis, 2 hours. Phase 2, on-site field inventory, tagging all 14 trees, measuring diameter at breast height, assessing baseline canopy condition, and calculating the exact critical root zones for every single tree, 4 hours. Phase 3, drafting the formal written report, embedding the safety graphics, writing out the specific mulch thickness and fencing specifications for the tree protection zones, 4 hours. Phase 4, revision time and final client presentation meeting, 2 hours. That is a total of 12 hours of anticipated work. You multiply those 12 hours by your $200 hourly rate, which gives you a baseline cost of $2,400. Now you apply your 20% contingency cushion, which is $480, to account for the contractor calling you 3 times with silly questions or the blueprints being updated at the last minute. You add those together and you present the client with a formal, fixed-price proposal of exactly $2,880 for a comprehensive tree protection plan. If the project goes smoothly and you finish it in 10 hours, your effective hourly rate just jumped to $288 an hour. If the contractor causes a minor delay and it takes you the full 12 or 13 hours, you are still completely covered and making your target margin. That is how you package a flat fee report without getting trapped into doing free labor. But now listen, let us talk about the ultimate weapon in consulting business mechanics. The absolute holy grail that separates the struggling independent arborist from the elite consultant. I am talking about the professional retainer system. A retainer is not an extra fee, it is an upfront financial deposit paid by the client before you perform any work, which sits in your account as a line of security. As you perform your hourly work or complete phases of your report, you draw down against that retainer. Why is this non-negotiable when you are dealing with developers, civil lawsuits, or large-scale construction monitoring? Because in the commercial world, accounts payable departments are notoriously slow, and developers are notorious for running out of funding halfway through a project. If you are working on open credit, billing them at the end of the month on a net 30 or net 60 basis, you might find yourself $3, $4, or $5,000 deep into research and fieldwork before you realize that the project has been foreclosed on or the developer has decided to contest your bill. When you have their money sitting in your account up front, you hold all the leverage. It completely changes the power dynamic. It guarantees that your brain is respected. Let us look at a real-world case study where the retainer system completely saved my skin and turned a potential financial disaster into a massive, profitable win. I was hired by an attorney who was representing an upscale homeowners association. A major utility contractor had come through the neighborhood to install underground fiber optic lines, and in the process, their directional boring machines had ripped completely through the critical root zones of 11 magnificent, mature laurel oaks that lined the main entrance boulevard. The trees were showing rapid canopy decline, tip dieback, and significant structural instability. The homeowners association was planning to sue the utility contractor for hundreds of thousands of dollars in property damage, and they needed me to act as their expert consulting arborist to perform a comprehensive forensic root damage assessment and a formal plant appraisal report for the lawsuit. Now, look, I knew this was going to be a long, drawn-out legal battle. The utility company's lawyers were going to fight everything tooth and nail. So I didn't just send over a standard work order. I issued a formal consulting services agreement with a mandatory, non-negotiable upfront retainer of $4,000. I explicitly stated in the agreement that my hourly rate for research, field evaluation, and report drafting was $250 an hour, and that all services would be billed weekly as a direct draw against that $4,000 retainer. The agreement also specified that the client must replenish the retainer back to its full $4,000 balance the moment the account fell below $1,000, and that all work would instantly cease if the account went into arrears. The Homeowners Association Board signed the agreement, passed a resolution, and wired the $4,000 into my account. I went to work. I spent 2 full days out on that hot asphalt boulevard. I conducted forensic root evaluations. I carefully hand-excavated targeted areas near the utility trenches using a hand trowel and a brush to expose the shattered, torn structural roots. I took precise measurements of the root diameters that were severed, calculated the percentage of the root system lost based on the distance from the trunk, took hundreds of high-resolution photographs, and gathered soil samples. I spent another 12 hours at my desk utilizing the 10th edition of the Guide for Plant Appraisal, calculating the exact monetary value of the structural and aesthetic depreciation of those historic oaks using the trunk formula method. It was intensive, meticulous, exhaustive, scientific work. By the end of week 2, I had logged exactly 16 hours of total consulting work. At $250 an hour, that came out to exactly $4,000. My initial retainer was completely exhausted, down to zero. That exact same week, a major internal political dispute broke out within the Homeowners Association Board. The board president resigned, the treasurer got replaced, and the entire lawsuit got put on a temporary hold while the neighborhood argued over budget allocations. It was a total mess, the kind of corporate gridlock that usually stalls a contractor's invoice for 6 months. But because I had structured my fee package correctly, I wasn't stressed for a single second. I didn't owe them anything, and they didn't owe me anything. I had already been paid for every single minute of my labor out of the upfront retainer. I simply sent a polite, automated system email to the new board treasurer stating that the initial analysis was complete, the preliminary data was secured, and that the drafting of the final formal expert report would commence the exact moment a second retainer replenishment of $4,000 was deposited into my account. Do you see the beauty of that setup? If I had operated on the old-school contractor billing system, sending an invoice at the end of the month after doing all that work, I would have been caught in the middle of their internal political war. I would have been calling and begging for my $4,000 while they argued over who had the authority to sign the check. My business would have been holding the bag for 16 hours of hard labor. Instead, I sat comfortably at my desk, completely protected, while they sorted out their internal issues. 2 months later, when they finally got their act together, they quietly wired the next $4,000, and I picked up my pen and finished the report. That is what happens when you know how to build a financial fortress around your mind. Let us transition now to the absolute core of this entire episode. This is the part where most tree guys get terrified because it involves the legal side of business. We need to talk about how to write a rock-solid, airtight consulting services agreement that defines your scope of work and limits your liability when you are offering professional advice. Listen to me very carefully. Your knowledge is powerful, but because it is powerful, it is dangerous. When you write a report that says a tree is safe, or a tree is hazardous, or a tree can survive construction, people are going to make massive financial decisions based entirely on your words. If those words are not legally protected, a biological failure can destroy everything you have built in your career. You need a contract that acts like a structural cable system, bracing your business against the legal forces of an adversarial world. There are 3 essential legal clauses that must be written into every single consulting contract you sign. If your contract doesn't have these 3 elements, it isn't a legal agreement. It is just a piece of paper waiting to get shredded in a courtroom. The first essential element is the absolute definition of the scope of work. You must define with surgical precision exactly what you are doing, and more importantly, exactly what you are not doing. In the production tree care world, the scope of work is simple. Remove the oak tree in the front yard. But in the consulting world, if your scope of work says something vague like assess the trees on the property, you have just opened yourself up to a catastrophic legal trap. If you write assess the trees on the property, and that property sits on 3 acres with 85 trees, and 6 months from now a hidden codominant stem on a pine tree in the far back corner of the lot splits apart and falls onto a neighbor's guest house, the client's insurance lawyers are going to pull up your contract. They are going to point to that line and say, look, it says right here, he was hired to assess the trees on the property. He didn't specify which ones, so he is legally responsible for missing that defect. Your scope of work must be hyper-specific and explicitly restrictive. It should read exactly like this out loud. The scope of work is strictly limited to a Level 2 basic visual assessment from the ground level of the one specific 55-inch diameter live oak tree located adjacent to the eastern corner of the primary residential structure. No other trees on the property will be evaluated or inspected. This assessment does not include any invasive or advanced diagnostic testing, such as root collar excavation, resistance drilling, or sonic tomography, unless explicitly added to this agreement via a written change order. Listen to how tight that is. You have drawn a box around your liability. You have named the specific tree, the specific location, and the specific level of inspection based on the industry standard best management practices. If any other tree on that lot fails, or if there is deep internal root rot underground that could only be detected with advanced decay detection machinery, you are completely insulated from blame because your contract explicitly stated that those elements were outside your scope of work. The second essential element is the limitation of liability clause. This is the legal firewall that protects your personal assets, your home, your savings, and your business entity from being wiped out by a lawsuit. A limitation of liability clause states that even if you make an honest mistake in your professional judgment, or if a tree fails despite your best assessment, the maximum financial damages the client can ever recover from you is legally capped at a specific, reasonable dollar amount. Your limitation of liability clause should use this exact language. To the absolute fullest extent permitted by law, the client agrees that the consultant's total cumulative liability for any and all injuries, claims, losses, expenses, damages, or litigation expenses arising out of or in any way related to this assignment, from any cause or causes, including but not limited to professional negligence, errors, omissions, or strict liability, shall be strictly limited to the total monetary amount of the professional consulting fee actually paid to the consultant under this agreement. Let us unpack what that means in plain English for a fellow working in the field. If a commercial property manager pays you $1,500 to conduct a risk assessment on a row of oaks near their parking lot, and 3 months later, during a severe storm, one of those oaks sheds a large limb and crushes a brand new luxury vehicle, and their insurance company tries to sue you for $60,000, claiming you missed a structural defect. Your attorney walks into court, drops your signed consulting agreement on the judge's bench, and points to that clause. The judge looks at it and says, the contract is clear. The parties agreed that liability is capped at the fee paid. The lawsuit is instantly stopped dead in its tracks, and your maximum financial exposure is limited to the $1,500 they paid you. You have effectively put a steel shield around your personal wealth. The third essential element is the termination and ownership of documents clause. This is the legal clause that prevents the nightmare scenario that Marcus went through, where a client steals your report, uses it to get what they want, and then refuses to pay your bill. Your contract must explicitly state that all reports, field notes, maps, data sheets, and digital files generated by your consulting firm are the exclusive intellectual property and copyright of your business. The client is not buying the report itself. They are purchasing a temporary revocable license to use that report for the specific purpose outlined in the contract, and that license only becomes active the exact second their final invoice is paid in full. The language for this clause must be airtight. All documents, reports, plan reviews, and digital deliverables prepared by the consultant pursuant to this agreement are instruments of professional service and shall remain the sole intellectual property and copyrighted material of the consultant. The client is granted a limited, non-transferable license to utilize these instruments solely for the specific project site identified herein, contingent upon the condition precedent that all fees and invoices due to the consultant are paid in full. Any unauthorized use, reproduction, or alteration of these instruments of service by the client prior to full payment, or for any purpose outside the original scope, is strictly prohibited and shall result in the immediate revocation of said license and the initiation of legal copyright enforcement. If you have that clause in your agreement, and a builder tries to slide your report under the door of the city building inspector without paying your invoice, you don't have to spend months begging for your money. You simply send a formal, registered legal notice to the city building department and the builder's legal counsel stating that the report being used to secure the permit is an unauthorized, copyrighted instrument of service, that the license has been revoked for non-payment, and that any reliance on that document by the city constitutes an infringement of federal copyright law. Let me tell you, when the city building department realizes they are holding an illegal document, they will halt that developer's permits faster than a chainsaw cuts through a dead pine. The developer will be running to your office with a cashier's check in his hand before the sun goes down. That is how you use the law to enforce respect for your mind. Now let us tie all of this together into a clean, systematic look at the actual revenue mechanics. How do you present this package to a new client so it feels smooth, natural, and completely authoritative? How do you take these complex legal and financial structures and communicate them without sounding like a rigid, robotic corporate lawyer? It all comes down to your onboarding process. When a premium lead clears your initial intake barrier, meaning they have agreed that their problem requires a paid consultation rather than a free estimate, you do not just show up at their property and start looking at trees. You send them a professional digital onboarding packet via email. This can be handled easily through simple project management software or digital signature platforms. The packet consists of 3 simple items: a brief, professional cover letter introducing your firm, a clear line item proposal outlining your estimated fees and deliverables, and your standard consulting services agreement containing the exact clauses we broke down today. Your cover letter should set the tone. It should be warm, confident, and professional. It should say something like this: Dear Mr. Davis, thank you for contacting our firm to assist you with the tree preservation strategy for your upcoming residential estate development. As an ISA-certified arborist with 30 years of hands-on expertise in managing historic green assets under construction stress, my priority is providing you with defensible, scientifically sound data to protect your real estate value and ensure code compliance. Enclosed, you will find our professional services agreement and fee schedule for this assignment. Please review and digitally sign the agreement and submit the initial retainer deposit so we can officially secure your date on our field calendar and begin our document review. We look forward to working with you as your strategic expert on site. Think about the psychological impact of that letter compared to the guy who text messages the client from his truck saying, "Hey man, I can come look at those trees Thursday afternoon if that works for you." You have completely re-engineered the client's expectations before you ever stand on their grass. You have presented yourself as a high-level corporate partner. When they open the fee schedule, it should be clean and clear. It should list your rates openly: initial diagnostic field visit and document review, flat fee of $250. Extended field analysis and construction impact monitoring, $200 per hour, billed in 15-minute increments. Formal written tree protection plan report, flat fee of $1,800. Required upfront retainer deposit, $2,000. By listing the fees openly and linking them directly to a signed contract, you remove all ambiguity. The client knows exactly what they are paying for, they know how your time is tracked, and they know that your advice is protected by a professional boundary. You have built a clean, machine-like structure that converts your 30 years of canopy sweat into a reliable, predictable stream of premium executive revenue. Look, I know this shift can feel overwhelming when you are used to the fast-paced, high-adrenaline world of production tree removal. When you are a climber, your day is governed by mechanical physics: angles, ropes, horsepower, and sawdust. It is visceral, it is immediate, and it is simple. Moving into the consulting world means your day is governed by professional business systems, contracts, liability clauses, research, and technical writing. It requires a different type of discipline. It requires you to sit at your desk, focus your mind, and treat your business architecture with the same meticulous care that you use to treat a triple frictional rigging setup on a massive removal. But let me promise you something. The freedom on the other side of this transition is worth every single ounce of effort it takes to learn these systems. When you package your brain correctly, you regain absolute control over your life. You are no longer at the mercy of the weather forecast. If it rains cats and dogs all morning, your production crews might be rained out, and your trucks might be stuck in the mud, losing money. But you can sit comfortably at your executive desk, reviewing engineering blueprints, checking soil lab results, and writing flat fee reports at $250 an hour. Your income is no longer tied to the number of hours your muscles can survive abuse in the canopy. Your income is tied to the compounding power of your wisdom. You have built a business that scales based on your authority, not your physical decay. Let us secure the core heavy lesson for today's episode. You must stop selling your intellectual property on open credit and verbal handshakes. You must package your brain using structured fees, mandatory upfront retainers, and an explicit consulting agreement that locks down your scope of work and wraps a steel fortress around your personal liability. Here is your Windshield homework assignment for today while you are driving between jobs or heading back to the shop. I want you to pull your truck over, take out a clean legal pad, or open up a blank document on your phone and write down your official consulting fee structure. Don't hedge your bets, don't play small, and don't let fear dictate the numbers. Write down your target hourly consulting rate. Make it at least $150 or $200 an hour. Write down your standard initial diagnostic site visit fee. And then I want you to research a standard professional services contract or look at the exact clauses we discussed today. The scope of work restriction, the limitation of liability, and the ownership of instruments of service. Commit right now to never providing a written diagnostic report or a development review based on a verbal promise again. Start building your contract architecture today. Respect the 30 years of struggle, sweat, and study that made you the expert you are. Package your brain like a premium asset. Stay safe out there in the field, and I will talk to you on the next episode.